The Eye of Discernment, 3. An anthology from the teachings of Ajaan Lee Dhammadharo. Phra Suddhidhammaransi Gambhiramedhacariya. Selected and translated from the Thai by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. For free distribution only, as a gift of Dhamma. Contents. Introduction. From frames of reference. From basic themes. Frames of reference. In using the mind as a frame of reference, there are three aspects to deal with. A. The mind inside. B. The mind outside. C. The mind in and of itself. The mind inside refers to a state exclusively in the heart when it isn't involved with any outer preoccupations. The mind outside refers to its interaction with such outer preoccupations as sights, sounds, etc. The mind in and of itself refers to the act of singling out any aspect of the mind as it appears, whether inside or out. As for the modes of the mind inside, there are three. 1. Ragasiddha, a mental state infused with desire or passion. 2. Dosasiddha, a sense of inner irritation and displeasure. 3. Mohasiddha, a cloudy, murky, or confused state of mind, in which it is unable to consider anything, in short, delusion. The mind outside is divided into the same three aspects: states of passion, irritation, and delusion. But these are said to be outside because once any of these aspects arises, it tends to go out and latch onto an outer preoccupation that simply serves to further aggravate the original state of passion, irritation, or delusion. The mind then doesn't clearly or truly understand its objects. Its knowledge goes off in various directions, away from the truth. Seeing beauty, for instance, in things that aren't beautiful, constancy in things that are inconstant, pleasure in things that are painful, and self in things that are not self. All of these things are aspects of the mind outside. The mind in and of itself refers to the act of singling out any one of these aspects of the mind. For example, sometimes passion arises, sometimes anger, sometimes delusion. Whichever aspect may be arising in the present, single it out. With your alertness firmly in place, be mindful of that aspect of the mind. Without making reference to any other objects and without letting any hopes or wants arise in that particular mental moment at all. Then focus unwaveringly on investigating that state of mind until you know its truth. The truth of these states is that sometimes, once they've arisen, they flare up and spread. Sometimes they die away. Their nature is to arise for a moment and then dissolve away with nothing of any substance or worth. When you are intent on examining things in this way with your mindfulness, alertness, and powers of focused investigation firmly in place, then none of these defilements, even though they may be appearing, will have the chance to grow or spread. This is like the baskets or jars used to cover new lettuce plants. If no one removes the baskets, the plants will never have a chance to grow, and will simply wither away and die. Thus you have to keep your alertness right with each mental state as it arises. Keep mindfulness constantly referring to its object. And use your powers of focused investigation to burn into those defilements so as to keep them away from the heart at all times. To put this another way, all of the mental states mentioned above are like lettuce or green gram seeds. Mindfulness is like a basket. Alertness is the person who scatters the seeds, while the power of focused investigation is the heat of the sun that burns them up. So far, we have mentioned only bad mental states. Their opposites are good mental states, Viragasiddha. The mind free from the grip of passion, Adosasiddha. The mind free from the annoyance or anger that can lead to loss and ruin, Amohasiddha. The mind free from delusion, intoxication, and misunderstandings. These are skillful states of mind, Kusalasiddha, which form the root of all that is good. When they arise, maintain them and observe them so that you can come to know the level of your mind. There are 4 levels of good mental states. 1. Kamavakarabhumi, the level of sensuality. 2. Rupavakarabhumi, the level of form. 3. Arupavakarabhumi, the level of formlessness. 4. Lokutarabhumi, the transcendent level. 1. The level of sensuality. A mental state arises and connects with a wholesome object. Any sight, sound, smell, taste, tactile sensation or idea that can form the basis for skillful mental states. When it meets with its object, it becomes happy, joyful, and glad. Here we're referring only to those sensory objects that are good for the mind. If you were to refer to the heavens of sensual bliss as they appear within each of us, the list would run as follows. Sights that can form the basis for skillful mental states are one level, sounds are another, and same with smells, tastes, tactile sensations and ideas. Together they form the 6 levels of heaven on the sensual level. To the level of form, a mental state arises from thinking about, vitaka, a physical object that serves as the theme of one's meditation. And then analyzing, vicara, the object into its various aspects. At the same time making sure that the mind doesn't slip away from the object, ekajitaramana. When the mind and its object are one in this way, the object becomes light. The mind is unburdened and can relax its sense of concern. Rapture, pity, and ease, sukha, arise as a result. When these 5 factors appear in the mind, it has entered the first jhana, the beginning stage in the level of form. 3. The level of formlessness, the mind lets go of its physical object on the level of form, but is still attached to a very subtle mental notion, the jhana of unbounded space. For instance, in which you are focused on a sense of emptiness and awareness with no physical object or image passing into your field of attention, so that you are unable to know its full range. What has actually happened is that you have curled up and are hiding inside. This isn't the kind of going in to know that comes from finishing your work. It's the going in to know that comes from wanting to run away. You've seen the faults of what arises outside you, but haven't seen that they really lie buried within you. So you've hidden inside by limiting the field of your attention. Some people, when they reach this point, believe that they have done away with defilement, because they mistake the emptiness for nibbana. Actually, it's only the first stage in the level of formlessness, and so is still on the mundane level. If you seriously want to know whether your mind is on the mundane or the transcendent level, then observe it when you turn your awareness inward and make it still. When you feel a sense of peace and ease that seems to have no defilements adulterating it at all, let go of that mental state, to see how it behaves on its own. If defilements can reappear, you're still on the mundane level. Sometimes that mental state remains unchanged through the power of your own efforts, but after a while you become unsure of your knowledge. Your mind has to keep fondling, i.e., making a running commentary on it. When this is the case, don't go believing that your knowledge is in any way true. There are many, many kinds of knowledge. The intellect knows, the heart knows, the mind knows, consciousness knows, discernment knows, alertness knows, awareness knows, unawareness knows. All these modes are based on knowledge, they differ simply in how they know. If you aren't able to distinguish clearly among the different modes of knowing, knowing can become confused. And so you might take wrong knowing to be right knowing, or unawareness to be awareness, or knowledge attached to suppositions, samyuti, to be freedom from suppositions, vimutti. Thus you should experiment and examine things carefully from all angles so that you can come to see for yourself which kind of knowledge is genuine, and which is counterfeit. Counterfeit knowledge merely knows, but can't let go. Genuine knowledge, when it goes about knowing anything, is bound to let go. All 3 levels of the mind discussed so far are on the mundane level. For the transcendent level, this begins with the path and fruition of entry into the stream to nibbana. Those who reach this level have begun by following the 3-fold training of virtue, concentration, and discernment on the mundane level, but then have gone on to gain their first true insight into the 4 noble truths, enabling them to free themselves from the first 3 fetters, sanayojana. Their minds are thus released into the stream to nibbana. The 3 fetters are: A. Self-identification, Sakyaditha, the view that leads us to believe that the body is our own. B. Doubt, Visakika, the uncertainty that leads us to be unsure of the good we believe in, i.e., of how much truth there is to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. C. Attachment to precepts and practices, Silabheta Paramasa. Fondling the good that we practice, being attached to those forms of goodness that are merely external. For instance, observing precepts or practices by clinging simply to the level of bodily action or speech. Examples of this attitude include such things as developing virtue by adhering simply to the precepts, practicing concentration by simply sitting like a post, not being able to free yourself from these actions, always holding on to the goodness that comes from them, happy when you have the chance to perform them in a particular way, upset when you don't. Thinking, for instance, that virtue is something you get from monks when they give you the precepts. That the 8 precepts are to be observed only on certain days and nights, months, and years. That you gain or lose merit simply as a result of external actions associated with your accustomed beliefs. None of these attitudes reaches the essence of virtue. They go no further than simply clinging to beliefs, customs, and conventions. Clutching onto these forms of goodness, always fondling them, unable to let them go. Thus this is called attachment to precepts and practices. Such attitudes are an obstacle to what is truly good. Take, for example, the long-held belief that goodness means to practice charity, virtue, and meditation on the Sabbath days. Stream winners have completely let go of such beliefs. Their hearts are no longer caught up in beliefs and customs. Their virtues no longer have precepts. In other words, they have reached the essence of virtue. Their virtue is free from the limits of time. In this they differ from ordinary, run-of-the-mill people. Ordinary people have to hand goodness over to external criteria, believing, for instance, that virtue lies on this day or that. During rain's retreat, during this or that month or year, and then holding fast to that belief. Maintaining that anyone who doesn't follow the custom can't be virtuous. In the end, such people have a hard time finding the opportunity really to do good. Thus we can say that they don't know the true criteria for goodness. As for stream winners, all the qualities of virtue have come in and filled their hearts. They are able to unshackle themselves from the conventional values of the world that say that this or that is good. What is truly good they have seen appear in their hearts. Good lies right here. Evil lies right here. Neither depends on external actions. This is in line with the Buddha's saying, Mano Pabangama Dhamma. Mano Setha Manomaya. All matters are preceded by the heart. Excelled by the heart. Achieved through the heart. This is what is meant by stream winner. Stream winners are like people who have rowed their boats into the main current of the Chao Phraya River, and so are destined to float down to the river's mouth and into the sea of Amida deathless Nibbana. There are 3 ways they can reach the sea. 1. The lowest level of stream winner is like a boatsman who leans back with his hand simply placed on the rudder. This level of stream winner reaches the goal slowly. 2. The second level is like a boatsman who has his foot on the rudder, his hands on the oars, and rows along. 3. The third level, the boat is equipped with a motor and the boatsman is at the steering wheel. And so he reaches the goal in practically no time at all. This reaching the stream to Nibbana is the beginning stage of the transcendent level. If you were to simplify the 3 fetters, you could do so as follows. To be attached to the body as being one's own is self-identification. To be attached to the actions of the body is attachment to precepts and practices. Not knowing how to separate the mind from the body or from one's actions makes one unable to see clearly and know truly. This leads to uncertainty and doubt. These are simply my opinions on the matter, so you who read this should consider things carefully on your own. This ends the discussion of the transcendent and mundane skillful states of mind. When you know the characteristics of the various mental states, you should use the 3 qualities mentioned above as your tools. Keep your mindfulness, alertness, and powers of focused investigation firmly in place at the mind. To be able to gain knowledge, you have to use the power of focused investigation, which is an aspect of discernment. To know how mental states arise and fall, pulling out, taking a stance, and then returning into stillness. You must keep your attention fixed on investigating these things constantly in order to be able to know the arising and falling away of mental states. And you will come to know the nature of the mind that doesn't arise and doesn't fall away. To know the arising and falling away of mental states of the past is one level of cognitive skill, vijja, and deserves to be called knowledge of previous births. To know the states of the mind as they change in the present deserves to be called knowledge of death and rebirth. To know how to separate mental states from their objects, knowing the primal nature of the mind. Knowing the current or force of the mind that flows to its objects. Separating the objects, the current of mind that flows, and the primal nature of the mind. To be able to know in this way deserves to be called knowledge of the ending of mental effluence. The objects or preoccupations of the mind are the effluent of sensuality. The current that flows is the effluent of becoming. Not knowing the primal nature of the mind is the effluent of unawareness. If we were to express this in terms of the Four Noble Truths, we would have to do so as follows. The objects or preoccupations of the mind are the truth of stress, dukkha sakka. The current of the mind that flows into and falls for its objects is the truth of the cause of stress, samadaya sakka. The mental state that penetrates in to see clearly the truth of all objects, the current of the mind. And the primal nature of the mind, is called the mental moment that forms the path, magasiddha. To let go of the objects, the mental current, and the primal nature of the mind, without any sense of attachment, is the truth of the disbanding of stress, nirasaka. When the three qualities that assist the mind, alertness, mindfulness, and focused investigation, are vigorous and strong, alertness becomes the awareness of release, vijavimati. Mindfulness becomes intuitive understanding, jnana, and focused investigation becomes liberating insight, vipassana. The discernment that can stay fixed on knowing the truth of stress without permitting any sense of pleasure or displeasure for its object to arise. Intuitive understanding fathoms the cause of stress, and the awareness of release knows the heart clearly all the way through. When you can know in this way, you can say that you know rightly. Here I'd like to back up and discuss the question of the mind in a little more detail. The word mind covers three aspects. 1. The primal nature of the mind. 2. Mental states. 3. Mental states in interaction with their objects. All of these aspects, taken together, make up the mind. If you don't know the mind in this way, you can't say that you really know it. All you can do is say that the mind arises and falls away, the mind doesn't rise or fall away, the mind is good, the mind is evil. The mind becomes annihilated, the mind doesn't become annihilated. The mind is a Dhamma, the mind isn't a Dhamma. The mind gains release, the mind doesn't gain release. The mind is Nibbana, the mind isn't Nibbana. The mind is sensory consciousness, the mind isn't sensory consciousness. The mind is the heart, the mind isn't the heart. As the Buddha taught, there are only two paths to practice the body, speech, and heart, and the body, speech, and mind. And in the end both paths reach the same point, their true goal is release. So if you want to know the truth concerning any of the above issues, you have to follow the path and reach the truth on your own. Otherwise, you'll have to argue endlessly. These issues for people who haven't practiced all the way to clear insight have been termed by people of wisdom as siddhammakkhana. Issues that can only make you break out in a sweat. So I would like to make a short explanation. The primal nature of the mind is a nature that simply knows. The current that thinks and streams out from knowing to various objects is a mental state. When this current connects with its objects and falls for them, it becomes a defilement, darkening the mind. This is a mental state in interaction. Mental states, by themselves and in interaction, whether good or evil, have to arise, have to disband, have to dissolve away by their very nature. The source of both these sorts of mental states is the primal nature of the mind, which neither arises nor disbands. It is a fixed phenomenon, Titti Dhamma, always in place. By the primal nature of the mind, which is termed pabhasara, or radiant, I mean the ordinary, elementary state of knowing in the present. But whoever isn't able to penetrate and to know it can't gain any good from it, like the proverbial monkey with the diamond. Thus the name given by the Buddha for this state of affairs is really fitting, avijja, dark knowledge, counterfeit knowledge. This is in line with the terms pubbant ananam, not knowing the beginning, i.e., the primal nature of the mind. Paranti ananam, not knowing the end, i.e., mental states in interaction with their objects. Mahyantika Ananam, not knowing the middle, i.e., the current that streams from the primal nature of knowing. When this is the case, the mind becomes a sankhara, a concoctor, a magician, fabricating prolifically in its myriad ways. This ends the discussion of the mind as a frame of reference. From basic themes go to contents. For mindfulness of death, insight meditation. In other words, keep death in mind. This is where the mind advances to the development of liberating insight. Taking death as its theme. Death here refers to the death occurring in the present physical sensations arising and passing away. Mental acts arising and passing away, all in a moment of awareness. Only when you're aware on this level can you be classed as being mindful of death. Now that we've brought up the topic of death, we have to reflect on birth, seeing how many ways sensations are born and how many ways mental acts are born. This is something a person with a quiet mind can know. Sensations have up to 5 levels of refinement. 1. Hinarupa, coarse sensations, sensations of discomfort, aches and pains. When these arise, focus on what causes them until they disappear. 2. Panadarupa, exquisite sensations that make the body feel pleasurable, light and refined. Focus on what causes them until they disappear. 3. Sukhamalarupa, delicate sensations, tender, yielding, and agile. When they arise, focus on what causes them until they disappear. 4. Olarikarupa, physical sensations that give a sense of grandeur, exuberance, brightness, and exaltation, mukhavano vipasadati. When they arise, focus on finding out what causes them until they disappear. All 4 of these sensations arise and disband by their very nature, and it's possible to find out where they first appear. 5. Manobhava, imagined circumstances that appear through the power of the mind. When they arise, focus on keeping track of them until they disappear. Once you're able to know in this way, you enter the sphere of true mindfulness of death. An explanation of this sort of sensation, when the mind is quiet and steadily concentrated. It has the power to create images in the imagination, inner sensations, or sensations within sensations. Whatever images it thinks of will then appear to it, and once they appear, the mind tends to enter into them and take up residence. It can go great distances. If the mind fastens onto these sensations, it is said to take birth simply because it has no sense of death. These sensations can appear in any of 5 ways. A. Arising from the posture of the body, disappearing when the posture changes. B. Arising from thoughts imbued with greed, hatred, or delusion arising, taking a stance, and then disbanding. C. Arising with an in-breath and disbanding with the following out-breath. D. Arising from the cleansing of the blood in the lungs appearing and disbanding in a single instant. E. Arising from the heart's pumping blood into the various parts of the body. The pressure of the blood causing sensations to arise that correspond to sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations. Sensations of this sort are arising and disbanding every moment. Another class of sensation is termed Gokararupa sensations that circle around the physical body. There are 5 sorts: light, sound, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations, each having 5 levels. For instance, common light travels slowly, in the flash of an eye it runs for a league and then dies away. The second level, subtle light, goes further, and the third level goes further still. The fourth and fifth levels can travel the entire universe. The same holds true for sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations. The relationships between all the potentials in the universe are interacting at every moment, differing only as to whether they're fast or slow. This is the inequality that has been termed anaxalakhana, inherent inconstancy. Whoever is ignorant is bound to think that all this is impossible, but actually this is the way things already are by their nature. We'll come to know this through Vijja cognitive skill, not through ordinary labels and concepts. This is called true knowing, which meditators who develop the inner eye will realize for themselves. Knowing the arising of these sensations, their persisting and their disbanding, in terms of their primary qualities and basic regularity. Knowing things for what they really are. Release, purity, dispassion, disbanding. Nibbinam paramam suksam. Nibbana is the ultimate ease. B is for mental acts that arise and die, their time span is many thousands of times faster than that of sensations. To be able to keep track of their arising and dying away, our awareness has to be still. The four kinds of mental acts are Vedana, the mind's experience of feelings of pleasure, pain, and indifference. Sana, recognizing and labeling the objects of the mind. Sankhara, mental fabrications or fashionings of good and bad. Vinana, distinct consciousness or cognizance of objects. One class of these mental acts stays in place, arising and disbanding with reference to the immediate present. Another class is termed Gokara Vedana, Gokara Sana, etc., which go out to refer to the world. Each of these has 5 levels, differing as to whether they're common, refined, or subtle, slow or fast. These 5 levels connect with each other, running out in stages, and then circling back to their starting point. Disbanding and then arising again, all without end. When we don't have the skill to discern the primary sensations and mental acts that stay in place, we can't see into the Gokara sensations and mental acts that go flowing around. This is termed avijja. The unawareness that opens the way for connecting consciousness, padasandhi vinana, giving rise to the act of fashioning, sankhara, which is the essence of kama. This gives fruit as sensations and feelings that are followed by craving. And then the act of labeling, which gives rise to another level of consciousness of sensory objects, and then the cycle goes circling on. This is termed the kandhavada, the cycle of the aggregates, circling and changing unevenly and inconsistently. To see this is called anakanupassanana, the knowledge that keeps track of inconstancy as it occurs. This is known through the inner eye, i.e., the skill of genuine discernment. Thus, those who practice the exercises of insight meditation should use their sensitivities and circumspection to the full if they hope to gain release from unawareness. Fashionings, in this context, are like waves on the ocean. If we're out in a boat on the ocean when the waves are high, our vision is curtailed. Our senses of hearing, smell, taste, touch, and ideation are all curtailed. We won't be able to perceive far into the distance. What this means is that when our minds are immersed in the hindrances, we won't be able to perceive death at all. But once we've been able to suppress the hindrances, it's like taking a boat across the ocean when there are no waves. We'll be able to see objects far in the distance. Our eyes will be clear seeing, our ears clear hearing, our senses of smell, taste, touch, and ideation will be broad and wide open. The water will be clear, and the light brilliant. We'll be able to know all around us. In the same way, those who are to know death clearly have to begin by practicing concentration as a foundation for developing liberating insight. How do the 5 sorts of above-mentioned sensation arise? What are their causes? How do they disappear? How do physical and mental feelings arise? How do they disappear? What are their causes? How do labels and concepts arise? What are their causes? How do they disappear? How do mental fashionings arise? What are their causes? How do they disappear? How does consciousness arise by way of the senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and ideation? What are its causes? How does it disappear? Altogether there are 4 levels to each of the 5 aggregates, khandhas. External and internal, staying in place and streaming outward. These can be known at all times, but only people who have the discernment that comes from training the mind in tranquility. An insight meditation will be able to know death on this level. The discernment that arises in this way has been termed Pubanivasana Satinana, i.e., understanding past sensations, future sensations, and sensations in the present. These sensations differ in the way they arise and pass away. To know this is to have mastered one cognitive skill. Kutupapadhanana, with discernment of this sort, we're able to keep track of the states of our own mind as they arise and disappear. Sometimes good as they arise and good as they disappear, sometimes bad as they arise and bad as they disappear. Sometimes good as they arise and bad as they disappear, sometimes bad as they arise and good as they disappear. To be able to keep track in this way is to know states of being and birth. Asavakhayanana, when the discernment of this skill arises, it leads to disenchantment with the way sensations and mental acts arise and disappear and then arise again. Simply circling about, coarser sensations going through the cycle slowly, more refined sensations going quickly. Coarser mental acts going slowly, more refined mental acts going quickly. When you can keep track of this, you know one form of stress. Now focus attention back on your own mind to see whether or not it's neutral at that moment. If the mind approves of its knowledge or of the things it knows, that's kamesu kalakanayaga, indulgence in pleasure. If the mind disapproves of its knowledge or of the things it knows, that's adakilamathanayaga, indulgence in self-infliction. Once you've seen this, make the mind neutral toward whatever it may know. That moment of awareness is the mental state forming the path. When the path arises, the causes of stress disband. Try your best to keep that mental state going. Follow that train of awareness as much as you can. The mind when it's in that state is said to be developing the path, and at whatever moment the path stands firm, disbanding and relinquishing occur. When you can do this, you reach the level where you know death clearly. People who know death in this way are then able to reduce the number of their own deaths. Some of the noble ones have 7 more deaths ahead of them, some have only 1 more, others go beyond death entirely. These noble ones are people who understand birth and death, and for this reason have only a few deaths left to them. Ordinary people who understand their own birth and death on this level are hard to find. Common, ordinary birth and death aren't especially necessary. But people who don't understand the Dhamma have to put up with birth and death as a common thing. So whoever is to know death on this level will have to develop the cognitive skill that comes from training the mind. The skill, here, is knowing which preoccupations of the mind are in the past, which are in the future, and which are in the present. This is cognitive skill, vijja. Letting go of the past, letting go of the future, letting go of the present, not latching onto anything at all, this is purity and release. As for unawareness, it's the exact opposite. Not knowing what's past, not knowing what's future, not knowing what's present, that is, the arising and falling away of sensations and mental acts. Or body and mind, or at most knowing only on the level of labels and concepts remembered from what other people have said. Not knowing on the level of awareness that we've developed on our own. All of this is classed as avijja, or unawareness. No matter how much we may use words of wisdom and discernment, it still won't gain us release. For instance, we may know that things are inconstant, but we still fall for inconstant things. We may know about things that are stressful, but we still fall for them. We may know that things are not self, but we still fall for things that are not self. Our knowledge of inconstancy, stress, and not self isn't true. Then how are these things truly known? Like this. Knowing both sides. Letting go both ways. Shedding everything. Knowing both sides means knowing what's constant and what's inconstant, what's stress and what's ease, what's not self and what's self. Letting go both ways means not latching onto things that are constant or inconstant. Not latching onto stress or ease, not latching onto self or not self. Shedding everything means not holding onto past, present, or future. Awareness doesn't head forward or back. And yet you can't say that it's taking a stance. Yavadeva nanamataya pati satamadya anis saito ca viharati. Naca kinsi lokyapati yati. Simply mindful and aware, the mind remains independent. Not attached to anything in the world.